Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our masterclass tonight. Can everyone hear me okay? Is my sound good? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. So I'm Rhianne van der Linde, and I'm a co-director at the Shakti Shiva Academy and also senior faculty. And I've got with me here tonight Lisa Grace, also senior faculty at the Shakti Shiva Academy. And I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. And Lisa is based in Oakland, California. And then we've also got on the call tonight Julia Joy, who's supporting us in the background. So I just wanted to make mention of her so that you're aware. She'll be helping us by popping some things into the chat box for you. So tonight's class is titled A Tantric Approach to Desire: 5 Reasons to Embrace Your Desires and How Exactly to Do It. And so whilst people are landing in the Zoom room, let's just simply take a moment to take a few deep breaths together. Taking a couple of slow, deep breaths in, and then just simply letting the out breath go. Just setting it free. Just breathing in and out together, turning the breath like a wheel as people land and arrive here in the Zoom room. Because one of the things that we really prioritize at the beginning of all of our calls at the Shakti Shiva Academy is radical self-care. So please do take some time right now to make sure that you've got everything that you'll need for your comfort for the next 90 minutes or so. I have a hot cup of tea that I like to sip, and I have a glass of water handy so that I can stay hydrated. Yeah, so just be sure that your environment is comfortable, that you have a pen and paper handy if you need that. And we'll be using the workbook so that you should have already received. So be sure to have that handy as well. And the link's in the chat for you if you haven't yet got hold of that. And so you're welcome to follow along in the workbook. You can journal, you can make notes and observations. And then, of course, after the class, you can always go back to the workbook and complete any of the exercises in your own time. So today's call is set for 90 minutes. And at the Shakti Shiva Academy, we like to honor both the Shakti and the Shiva being the container and the Shakti being the form. And so we may find that we're still in a juicy flow at the 90-minute mark. And if that is the case, then we'll be sure to make a very clear pivot point for those of you who need to leave, and we'll be able to continue for those of you who are able to stay on with us. Seems like we have a small group tonight. So nice and cozy and intimate. It's wonderful. So just to give you a brief overview of the flow for the class, Lisa's going to land and ground us in a short body-based meditation. And then we'll both share some teachings around a tantric approach to desire. And we're going to be covering 3 of the 5 reasons to embrace your desires in today's class. And the other 2 reasons will be covered in Sunday's masterclass with Claire Rumor and Stephen Tredrier. So be sure to sign up for that class as well, because you will receive the recording even if you're not able to join live. And Julia Joy is going to put that link into the chat box for you. And then there'll also be plenty of opportunities for questions and shares on today's call. And then finally, we're going to be completing with a brief overview of our upcoming 9-month course, Sexual Shadow Integration work. And that's starting very soon on the 7th of April. Looking forward to sharing with you about that. So before I hand over to Lisa to introduce herself, I'd like to say just a few things about the Shakti Shiva Academy. The Academy was established in early 2017 by Shakti Milan. And for the benefit of those of you who never met Shakti, I'd like to share just a little bit about who she was, because she was a remarkable and very much loved being. She was a woman who lived her life with absolute totality, a tantrika and a dakini who grew up and lived in Cape Town, South Africa. And you know, even more than a decade ago, Shakti already understood that sexual trauma and shaming can occur in really very subtle ways. And then also that its impact on our individual lives and also on our society is really hugely underestimated. And she also realized that the collective will only transform if individuals like you and like me, if we awaken to our true nature. And of course, Shakti had a real gift and a passion for supporting this realization of truth in men and women. And she shared the wisdom, her wisdom on evolutionary sexuality with absolutely everyone who showed up on her path. And Shakti left her body in July 2017 after a journey with breast cancer. And she really left us an incredible legacy in the form of her book, Sexual Awakening for Women, and then also in the body of work that she left to us in the form of the various online courses that she created. So that's just a little bit about Shakti. And also just to say that meeting Shakti was really a pivotal point on my personal journey. And to share a little bit about myself and how I came to be on this path and find myself sitting right here, right now. Back in about 2008, my world kind of imploded quite spectacularly. I was in the middle of a very heartbreaking meltdown of the relationship that I was in at the time, and it was this breakup was filled with a lot of shame and a lot of humiliation, a lot of disbelief as the secret threads of sexual addiction and codependency revealed themselves. And then quite unexpectedly in the middle of all of that, I also suddenly found myself without a job due to a retrenchment or a layoff, as I understand it's called in America, for those of you who don't understand the word retrenchment. And yeah, that was, to be honest, probably simultaneously the most brutal and the most beautiful time of my life, paradoxically. The loss of these two very key pieces, my relationship and my career, both of which my identity was hugely invested in. And I hadn't even realized that at the time. It was like having a rug pulled out from underneath me. And really, I'd say that the structure of my personal reality just collapsed. And at that time, all of my energy just turned inward. It was kind of like a vertical plummet into the unconscious, the journey into the underground, I suppose it would be said in a more mythological way. And I ended up being out of circulation in the world without work, without income for 3 years or so. And it was really a very scary time. for me and for the people who love me. And then it was also in that time that I met Shakti. And I signed up for her very first offering of her totality therapy training. And that incredible work that I did with Shakti at that time presented me with a very rare opportunity. I don't think a lot of people get this opportunity to investigate who I really am, beyond the confines of right and wrong, or beyond the gender roles and the stereotypes that I had been playing, and also beyond any ancestral expectations that I'd grown up with. And I guess I could say that for the last 14 years or so, I've really been exploring my sexuality, outside of the usual definition of relationship. And also, I've really taken Shakti's advice to heart, and that was to keep falling more deeply in love with myself. That was one of the questions that she asked over and over again, was keep falling more deeply in love with yourself. And the other one that's become really important to me is to ask myself, what is it that I really, really want? What is it that I desire? And so it really is a great honor and a delight for me to share some of what has been so transformational for me with you. And I'm looking hugely forward to the time we've got together this evening. And so I'm going to hand over to Lisa Grace now, for her to introduce herself to you.
Thank you, Rhianne. Hello, everyone. So I've been teaching with the Shakti Shiva Academy since 2020. And I met Shakti in 2011 and did everything I could with her for 7 years until the time of her passing, and including the original totality therapy program that Rhianne spoke to. That was just so completely transformational in terms of confronting every trigger that would possibly come up about ourselves as human beings and as spiritual beings, and how those meet, and what the truth is of actually being in our skin and shedding identity. It's just truly, I haven't encountered any other work like this. So it's such an honor to be here and continuing this on. So I have a background in performing arts and psychology and divinity studies, and also decades of experience with embodiment practices like dance and martial arts and mindfulness. And I have extensive experience with BDSM and kink and alternative relating styles, polyamory, all kinds of sex practitioner work. And so I bring that cultural, Western cultural influence here. And I'm just so excited to be engaging today with you in this desire topic, because learning conscious embrace and attunement with our desire is truly a key to our vitality. It's honoring that fun and really informative, we'll get into that today, energy, and just all about including our full selves right out into the farthest reaches, and bringing that attention, intention back into ourselves and releasing that power. And so it is with great honor that I take you into, as we like to start with in our teachings, as we've now covered all of the information pieces, doing just a little bit of embodiment. So let's start by shaking off, allowing a side to side, front to back, whatever feels good, to notice what has become a little stagnant or held in place while showing up, whatever it means, showing up properly to a call like this and being at attention. And bring it up to the face. You can turn away from the camera if you want. I can't. So no worries about what it looks like. It's all for you. All for feeling the biggest stretch. And then feel the opposite. Feel the contraction in your body. Curl up into a little ball and make your face tight. And then release it. And let's do that one more time now that you know what we're feeling into the edges of this expression, of feeling this contraction and the tightness and the then it be in your face and your toes and your fingers. And then release. Feeling the space, feeling the openness and the release in your body. And a little more wiggling to find what feels like the most supportive and natural center for you in this moment, letting your weight come naturally to rest between your hips and feeling your spine lightly lifted and the support of your seat beneath you. And noticing the breath. A few deep breaths like big gulps of water, wetting down to the farthest reaches of your toes and your fingers, into every cell of your lungs and your pelvis. And keeping your eyes closed, keeping your attention inside, I'd like you to take a moment to think of something that you could desire in this moment. Something, it could be as little as a little taste of chocolate or a drink of water even. Or something big like a new car, new house. And just noticing where you feel that in your body. Making it nice and slow and deep. And noticing what arises in your body when you pick one thing and think about how nice it would be to have that. And then pick just one of those places in your body that's activated right now and zoom in really close to that part of your body. It could be your chest or the back of your neck or your mouth or your genitals, whatever it is, just picking one place and then noticing the sensation there and unpacking that sensation simply as sensation. See if you can stick with what is actually experienced in terms of, is it a tingle or a tightness or a heat, before you let the meaning making come in. Letting go of an idea of what it means, simply noticing the sensation. And notice if it's easy to do that, if it's challenging, and just making note of that for yourself in this beginning of exploration with sensation and desire. So making mental note and then letting go, you can gently open your eyes and do a little movement again to reset from that moment. Ah, wonderful. I'm coming back to joining the circle here. So here we are discussing a tantric approach to desire. Desire is standardly defined as a strong feeling of wanting to have something or wishing something to happen. And we have physical desires we call thirst or hunger, and we have curiosity when we're talking about knowledge, desire for knowledge, and lust when we're talking about sexuality. But desire is not actually about suffering. It's an instrument of liberation. So that's what we're here to fully explore today, is desire as an instrument of liberation. In Hinduism, desire is the very vibration of creation. You can feel the release into that, rather than a tightness of need or want that we typically define desire as, but a very vibration of creation. So let's take a moment now. If you have a piece of paper in front of you, or you want to pull something up on your screen, and to take a minute and write at the top, I fear desire because. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to brainstorm. It could look like bullet points or a paragraph, whatever feels right to you, to explore this question or the ending of this sentence. I fear desire because. Just starting to explore this connection between desire and fear. What stops us from being in our desire all the time? Yeah, really starting to reveal the stories that come up around desire when exploring this. I fear desire because. And try to just jot down as many ideas as you can without censoring yourself. This is just for you. And I'll bet that people could keep writing about this for some time. But I'm going to move it along and invite people, if you'd like, to share in the chat. Please feel free to share something that came up for you, especially if there's something surprising. Was there anything surprising to you in starting to feel into this relationship between fear and desire? Thank you. Starting us off, Clay, sin, domination. Yeah, won't get it right. Won't know what I want, too much work. Fear that my desires cancel each other out. If I follow one desire, yeah. Following desire for pleasure in the moment. Will I not do the work to make the money to afford the things that give me safety? I fear becoming enslaved to my emotions. Yes, excellent. Limiting belief systems, culture and family. Yes, I need to earn it. Fear to surrender. Yes, excellent. Fear of change to have that, of the change to have that desire. Yeah, I call that the ecology of what's at risk if we change. Yeah, thank you. Great. Hopefully you see some inspiration or some camaraderie there. If you see something you recognize, it might give someone the wrong idea. Sexual boundaries. Yes, great. Okay, so one of the first ways that I want to start unpacking this desire is looking at the concept of relating to desire from subject and object position. There's subject and object desire. Typically, when we talk about desire, we're talking about what is being desired. I want that thing. There's a focus on that external thing. If I achieve that, I will be satisfied. This aching will stop, or it will say such and such about me. I'm a successful person. I'm a complete person. I belong. You know, there's so many things that we project onto these objects of desire. And so this is what I'm talking about when I refer to object desire, that it's this gap gets created between desire and satisfaction that we need. That the satisfaction is the idea that when we get the thing, or even that we've had the experience, we get the thing and then we have this experience of satisfaction. But as we know, that fades sometimes very quickly, plunging us into that cycle again of that gap. And desire must confront that gap that is created by the clinging of those wishes, of those reachings for the object outside of ourselves. The piece of chocolate, or the drink, the car, or the date, the likes on Facebook, whatever it is. And this isn't anything to do with a value judgment about what is being desired. I'm not saying that any of those things are better or more enlightened or a better thing to want. It's all this concept of, if it's something that we're reaching for outside of ourselves, it's because we're perceiving ourselves as separate from it. And really, each thing that we're desiring is us trying to reconnect with ourselves, some essence of ourselves in some way. So what is it that's not already here? What story about myself is it supporting as I see myself as separate from that thing that will fill this space? So subject desire is shifting that focus and energy and that relationship with desire into the one who desires. Feeling myself, or feeling yourself as the one who desires is subject desire. And this act of claiming desire and owning this, it takes it from being a leaky projection of energy onto that external thing where this gap gets created between desire and satisfaction, and allows the experience of desire to be its own complete experience. It's allowing it to be the vitality of your life. It's maintaining just the curiosity, the savoring, the sensation, like we did briefly in the meditation, of feeling this is present in my body. This is bringing me back into myself, of just the realization of this complete experience of desire. And it's opening this field of experience. You can feel how that just creates an open-ended, here I am right now with what's here. It's a very tantric principle to be fully present with what is. Rather, there's a misconception that tantra is about some hedonistic pursuit of carnal pleasure or satisfaction of desire, when really it's all about being fully here with what is, and with this experience of desire, being able to savor that. It's rather than it being determined by an achievement or completion. Can you feel the difference there in your bodies of being subject, one who desires? So why and how does this embrace of desire work as a path to awakening? So I'm going to pass it to Rhianne to get into our points today about desire.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm going to start sharing with you the very first reason to embrace our desire. And that is that it takes us to the resolution of the unconscious. So just breathe that in for a moment. Our desire takes us to the resolution of the unconscious. And what is it that I mean when I say the resolution of the unconscious? Well, really much of the work of Tantra is all about uncovering and integrating what has been lying hidden in the unconscious, personal unconscious, collective unconscious. Because the unconscious is where we store all of our suppressed experience. And that includes all of the experiences, big and small experiences, that were too much for us to feel to the very depths at the time that they happened to us. So if you think about it, overwhelming experiences can really include a wide range, anything from an overt sexual violation, but it also includes the more subtle moments in our development. Like, for instance, when our mother decided not to breastfeed us anymore, or maybe we simply felt the disapproval of a parent. You know, that can feel like a death for a child. And so essentially, if the feelings that arose as a consequence of whatever the incident was for you, or incidents, because there will be a series of them, if they were too much for us to deal with at the time, then they got stored in our unconscious to be revisited at another time. And so basically from puberty onwards until our maturation is complete, unconscious has only one job. And that's to purge the massive backlog of incomplete feelings which have been accumulated. And we often refer to these as psychological traumas. So to do this, how does the unconscious do this? So to do this, it has to arrange events that resonate with these past traumas, that resonate with your past traumas, your very specific past traumas. It has to trigger them and then moving them towards consciousness where they can be felt through, completed, and finished. So to get that pile of trauma that we all have addressed, the subconscious, or your subconscious, has two superpowers. And the first one is that it gets to generate your desires by orchestrating, catalyzing events in your life. And this is really everything that's happening to you all of the time. Everything that's arising in your reality. It's all there to serve your awakening. So your relationships, your circumstances, your feelings, your behaviors, all of it, everything that's happening in the field of arising is your unconscious orchestrating events to bring you to a greater awakening. And then the second superpower of your subconscious mind is that your subconscious mind is cleverer than your conscious mind. And so therefore it is much cleverer than you are. And it will continue doing whatever it takes to get through to you. So it wants to lead you from the liberation from the past so that you can become truly capable of living in the moment. That phrase that's so bandied about, living in the moment. And what does that even really mean? Because I think if we're all honest, what we're all looking for is freedom. And I personally don't think that there's any greater freedom than responding and relating directly in this moment to life's arising. And so this is the kind of crux of it, is that if you've got any feelings that have been put away for later, and guess what? We all do have feelings that we've put away for later, every single one of us. Then what we like to say is that later is now. The time is now. And there's a great real life example in the workbook illustrating how our desire can take us to the resolution of the unconscious, and also highlighting how our desires aren't always quite what they seem to be about. There's layers beneath our desires, and that it behoves us to keep digging deeper beneath the desire to get through to what the actual desire is. So I want to really encourage you to take a look at the journaling prompt in the workbook over the next few days, just to write down what are some of the experiences from your past that you suspect or that you know that you didn't fully own at the time. And I'm going to hand over to Lisa now, and she's going to share with us the second reason why it's a very good reason, a good idea to embrace our desire.
So another reason to embrace our desire is that it makes our desire a place of presence. If we can say yes to our desire, then desire itself can become a meditation. We work a lot with polarities in these practices of awakening, the extremes and opposites that make for totality, like night and day, good and bad, or the principles of masculine and feminine. And a big one with desire is compulsion or repulsion, or attraction and repulsion. We're constantly pursuing or running away from what we want. Like, have you ever watched a horror movie like this? Like teasing yourself with the screen of there's some reason that we keep putting ourselves through these experiences, or going on a roller coaster and screaming. There's an attraction and repulsion there. And have you ever left the room when somebody that you're attracted to comes into the room? Because there is an attraction and a repulsion of having to deal with that situation. So these are great examples of that. And until those patterns become conscious, they're constant and reactive and habitual and run by the unconscious. They're background stories or judgments or attachments to identity of how do I want to be seen or not seen. And this is the essence of shadow. Shadow is all the parts of self we unconsciously or even consciously keep tucked away. They're parts of our fullness. And there's a misconception about shadow that plays into shame. And that's that in shadow work, we're trying to get rid of our shadows. And oof, you feel how that quite perpetuates that cycle of hiding and separation of these parts of ourselves. And shadow work is really about inviting all of those maligned, judged, misunderstood parts of our awareness or out of the shadows and into our awareness and into our ownership, integrating and absorbing them into our fullness and our truth. And you can see how this applies to desire, yeah? Especially creating fantasy and taboo. And there's the well-known Carl Jung quote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." We love to do that. Oh, it's just fate. When really it's all of these parts of self, as Rhianne went into in explaining the unconscious, that are wanting to reunite and wanting to be recognized, wanting to be completed. So it's all these opportunities to do just that. And it tends to create the fear and create the repulsion, create our reaction to running away, like someone put in the chat, the fear of change is just enough to do that to our ego, to make us not want to stay and actually look at what's here. So there's an example in the workbook, and that's all about a kind of partner dance called microfusion. That's truly a dance with this pure presence that comes in when we start to let go of these expectations of self, of these ideas of who we should or shouldn't be. And it's this dance with pure presence. It's play. It's an example of surrendering to the moment. And it can only be achieved when we let go of ideas of what we're supposed to be doing and what we're supposed to be looking like. In every element, like earth, air, fire, water, in every natural occurrence, there's an unpredictability to it. And the idea that we can control all that is an illusion. It's quite a human fantasy that we're in control of the natural flow of anything organic in our breath, in our movements at the moment, that is in the fine nature of our responsiveness to what's actually here. When we start to melt away this maze that we've built for ourselves around our identities and what fits or doesn't fit into that identity. Yeah, that really, it begins to just completely free up when we shed these identity constructs. So I'm going to give you another minute to write. So taking out your paper again, or there's actually a space in the workbook for this if you're following along in the workbook. And the journaling prompt there is, what are some things you desire that you have a complicated relationship with? What attachments or judgments, etc., could you let go of so that you're more able to enjoy these desires for what they are, which is messengers from your unconscious. So, what are some of these things you desire that you have a complicated relationship with? And when you have a few of those jotted down, you could explore a little more deeply into that question of what attachments or judgments could you let go of so that you could just more freely enjoy those desires for what they are. I'll read, there's an example in the workbook of you desire to earn 6 figures, but you feel guilty for desiring something so superficial. Or you desire an open marriage, but you feel conflicted about wanting that when your spouse does not. As people are starting to wrap up, and of course, please go back and spend some more time with developing these thoughts. It's such rich fodder to start to play with in your life. If anybody would like to share in the chat, what are some that you came up with? Desire for partnership, judgment, my desire is too strong, or the desire itself pushes it away. Oh, yes. Repartnering with my husband, with whom I'm experimentally separated, worried I will lose myself again in codependency. Oh, yeah, that's a sensitive dance. Beautiful consciousness you're bringing to that. Giving it another second. I think I see a couple people writing still. To be worshipped by others, the need for attention I've never fully understood. Yeah, I think that's really common. the desire to be desired. I'd like more embodiment, so I think I should let go of attachment to control and to some family loyalty agreements. Oh yeah, starting to get into all those crunchy judgments of what it's supposed to look like. Thank you, everyone. Great stuff. And I'm going to pass it back to Rhianne to move on to our next reason.
Yeah, so there's a third very good reason to embrace our desire, and that is that it speeds up the journey of our awakening. So in Tantra, the mantra is enlightenment this lifetime or bust. And Shakti Milan said these very beautiful words. She said that the only way to no longer be a prisoner of our desires and our fears is to face them, to live them, to immerse in them, and to move through them. So I think that the thing to realize here is that the full realization of who we are as one with all of existence will only happen when we have fulfilled and completed our human journey of desire. It's a very human journey. Because if the core desires remain unfulfilled in our being, then they will keep on calling us back to the world of objects and attachments over and over and over again. And so the aim and the intention of all of our teachings actually at the Shakti Shiva Academy is to be as total as possible with all of our experience, and that's including our sexuality. So that we can speed up the process towards full awakening. It's as simple as that. And when we allow ourselves to feel and to be with and to even embrace whatever the moment brings, then we really begin to see that every single moment is our greatest teacher. I enjoy a man called Krishna Das, and he says this very powerful thing. He says, as a devotional practice, taking everything that happens in your life as a teaching of the Guru is very, very powerful. And then my teacher, Aisha Salem, suggests that that we develop a yum yum attitude to absolutely everything. A yum yum, like we eat it up. The things we want, the things we don't want, the things we prefer, the things we want to grab and grasp, the things we want to push away. Develop a yum yum attitude to all of it. Because here's the thing, you know, as we turn towards our desire and as we wake up, we start to clearly see that it's desire that is the power that is igniting our world. That desire creates, and that it's your desire that's creating the world. I mean, that is powerful. It's your desire that is creating the world. The Sanskrit word Shakti actually translates as creative power. And it is this power that manifests the planets, that moves the oceans, that spins the galaxies. And it's through our awakened sexual energy that the worlds are birthed. Our awakened sexual energy is a universal force of creation. And this is our power and potential as human beings. And I think that the time has come for each of us to take radical responsibility for everything in our experience. And I think, why wake up? What's the point? This desire that says it speeds up the journey of our awakening. Well, in my experience, as we start to wake up, we start to realize that reality is not that solid. The world is not that solid. We're creating it in every single moment, with every thought, with every action. And so when we agree to do this work of unraveling and unlayering all the limiting beliefs that have created our personality structure, then we start to see and to get clear on what it is that we desire and what it is that we really, really, really want. And then when we're at that place, we can start to create the world that we all really, really, really want to live in. And for me, that's super exciting. It's what lights my fire. I'm passionate about discovering more and more about what I really, really want. And I'm passionate about helping you to discover what it is that you really, really want, so that together we can co-create a world that we all really, really, really want to live in. So I'm going to pass back over to Lisa, and she'll review what we've covered in this class, and then she'll also open up the call to your questions and your inquiry.
So, looking back at what we've covered today, we started with that desire is not about suffering, but about liberation. And that we can relate to desire as the subject of desire, recognizing our tendency to relate to it through objects, but finding the deliciousness in being our own subject, one who experiences desire. And desire takes us to the resolution of the unconscious. Our erotic attractions and fantasies hold the keys to what is locked away in the unconscious. And desire, when we embrace it, becomes a place of presence. Going back to that subject desire, it's that being able to actually experience it as a meditation of being in relationship with the right now moment, of what is here flowing inside of me and what is here in my exquisite responsiveness to the right now moment, when I start to release ideas of who I should or shouldn't be. And it speeds up the journey of awakening. Enlightenment this lifetime or bust. It's back to that idea of that all of those things that you've been storing away, all of the emotions that you aren't ready to look at, saving for a later time, well, that later time is now. It's all in the service of your awakening, especially with feeling awakening as the recognition that this world is not so permanent, that it is in our own creation, and that our thoughts are not something to attach to. There's something to allow to drift on by and be continuing in that dance of being in relationship with the right now moment, our ever-changing selves. And I'll touch on the two that will be covered on Sunday if you register for that class. And that is, it ignites the fire of our life force, allowing it to fully ignite that fire and then be in relationship with it so that it can come down to the smoldering blue flame of Tantra. And also it confronts us with our taboos. It really starts this process of bringing shadows into the light and getting real with what our desires are, recognizing them as really potent parts of our own power and our own truth. So with that, I will open up the space to questions, shares, anything that's alive for you right now is totally welcome. And please, if you know how to do so, raise your electronic hand, because that makes it easy to see and the order that hands go up in. So that's under reactions at the bottom of your screen. And then there's the option to raise hand. Brandon, I see your hand.
Hello.
Hi.
So I'll admit that right now, for whatever reasons, I'm a bit nervous, but I think I do have a note that I can share aloud to my first experience of listening to this. So when I hear all of this, being a spiritual person, I try I at least try to do a lot of work with working with my unconscious and stuff. Just to share aloud, I at some point in my life I established just like these I divided up my subconscious and gave them kind of these personas, these masks to work with. And so now here today, I see these masks from my past selves, kind of like these cemented parts of trauma that I want to work through. And my reaction to that is I get nervous. The more, mature, the older I get, the more I feel how challenging these subconscious traumas are. It's like they were put on the back burner for a reason. And it kind of scares me to have to try and get through them all, because I'm at a point where I feel like, oh, I've been letting this pile up and pile up. I have these really strong masks in my subconscious that I'm at least aware of, but I know there's more work to be done. And so to summarize that all, I wrote down one of the struggles I'm having is the object driven mind. It's like, I want that house. I want that space to myself. I want this. I want that. And my impatient heart, the emotional reaction to, I want that house right now. I want that food right now. And so I think the goal should be to bring these two into a healed alignment. And my first thoughts are, maybe that looks like me building a better communication between mind and heart. And honestly, I got that idea from a meditative activation I did a while ago, that I've been putting faith is something that's developing ever since I did that particular meditation.
Mm. Thank you, Brandon. Mm. Oh, so many things come to mind here. I'm not exactly sure of if there was a question to answer.
I guess my question is well, yeah,
Okay,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was thinking about your point about so many places to be working with. I mean, first of all, you've found this work, and so you're learning how to offer yourself such container, as even like the courses that we're doing here are a container of having shared support and witnessing and exploration and normalizing and being able to developing the tools of witness and consciousness within yourself to be able to recognize all those aspects and take care of them, nurture them, welcome them with compassion and witnessing as they arise. And so working with all of these, the trauma points and the things that are so formative, the little caches of emotions, as you're pointing out, that there would be a whole lot by this point in your life. In doing this work, as you get more upstream in your life, so in younger years, and able to recognize that you're going back to those younger spaces and able to show up for yourself in the witness space of offering a healthy adult energy to welcome that learning of that this love is here for you now. And it can become a deeply enriching act when getting to those younger spaces and able to reparent yourself, in a sense, of offering the witnessing and the love and the understanding that wasn't available to that little one in the moment. In looking at trauma, as Gabor Mate and some other people that are working deeply with it are recognizing that it's not simply what happened, it's the support that wasn't available, or the not being able to be seen, or not being able to be understood or held, or whatever was needed in that moment, that really solidifies the trauma, that really creates it. And so this is the process of being able to actually offer yourself those spaces.
Yeah,
So,
in hearing that, I guess one of the fears that's coming up for me is I fear I'll never master this skill, that I'll always be distracted from being present and aware, which is, I think, the underlying goal to our desires, that ability to be present and accept the here and now.
Yeah, thank you for voicing that. So many stories that can come in and be distractions, especially the I'm not doing it right, I'm never gonna get it. Can you hear how all of that is even a distraction itself from just being with what's here? And so as you're creating more of these tools and the witness space to be able to hold all of the waves as they come in, and hold that this is not the new me, this is not the new way of being. If something pops up, if I have an activation and an upset, being able to hold that this is just part of the process. And here we are learning to recognize and appreciate even the discomforts, even where the ego starts screaming and say, no, don't look over there, that is so not comfortable and not how I want to be seen in the world. But of holding the space to be able to just say, yeah, you too, and have the confidence that that is not you, that is not the totality of you, and creating the inner safety to keep going with this work.
I like that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Awesome work you're doing. Okay.
I wanted to add something there, Lisa.
Yes, please, Rhianne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Brandon, that it feels important that when we recognize that as we get closer and closer to like our core wounding, as we're doing this work, as we mature, that the intensity increases. It's almost like if you think of a cone, like if you're at the bottom of the cone, but as there's a lot of space, as you get up into that apex of the cone, everything exponentially intensifies. And that, I think, one of the tools that we want to learn as that process is happening is to, I think Lisa pointed it, is how to reparent, how to bring our adult self, our witness, to the moment in which the trigger or the trauma is happening, and to really have learned how to deeply love, care, and nurture ourselves when we're feeling these uncomfortable feelings. so that we don't abandon, reject, or betray ourselves in that moment, which is when we re-traumatize ourselves or split off from the possibility of resolution. So like just to recognize that in your process of doing this work, that it is going to heat up and you're experiencing that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Rhianne. Okay, Anna.
Hi, thank you. I would like to ask, which is the difference among desire, passion, and longing, if there is one? Thank you.
Thank you. Rhianne, this feels like your language. Would you like to look at this?
Yeah, let's do it. Desire, passion, longing. They're all such loaded, juicy, numinous words. Actually, they're feeling words. Really feel them. I wouldn't say that I have like a definition for each of them, but I definitely can feel the nuanced flavor of each of them. And I think there's kind of a path of evolution through them as well. And perhaps we arrive at our longing, and to really honor our longing, like to bow down even before our longing at some place. You know, once we've really sat with our desires, I feel like the longing is what we get to. It's at the bottom of the pile of the layers of desire. And in that process of discovering what it is that we most deeply long for, I think our passion and our purpose and our pleasure are all ignited and unleashed and constellated in that process. So that's would be my way of working with that. And it's so juicy. I'd love to hear a little bit about what the words mean for you.
For Anna.
Yeah, for Anna.
Yes. Well, English is not my mother tongue, so I've been reading a lot about that, and I'm taking a course on on mystics. I guess that even if it may sound weird, I think there's a lot of connection between, well, not for you, but there's a lot of connection between mysticism and sensuality and desire and all these topics we are addressing here. And the other day they were asking about that, and well, some people were saying that passion, well, they were relating these words to a question of time, of duration, of length. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying, but that passion is
interesting.
It's short. It's for a short period of time. That desire, it's longer, but it's not really as deep as the longing. A little bit as you explained. But
Beautiful.
I think yes, I think it's well, I think it's just a question of vocabulary, terminology, and how you understand each word, and not the word as an absolute value, I guess. But I was wondering for you, which was the nuance between, well, among all of them. So thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for bringing in the nuance. And Kennedy.
Hi, it's Kennedy. My question is a little hard to articulate, but as I come to, I have a sense most of my life of not having a very clear sense of who I am. And so in particular in relationships with others. So I find that I need to go, like, isolate myself often to be able to try to hear my own voices.
Mm.
My question is, I know some people in the world who seem to really connect with their desires and operate their daily lives based on their desire in every moment, which seems to be sort of this ideal that we speak of, to be really present with the moment. And there's a lot of talk too of like giving ourselves the ability to change our mind all the time too, right? With consent, there's always these reminders that we always can change our minds. And my experience in the world is mostly fairly controlled and subdued and planned. And I don't want to always be that constricted. I feel the constriction of all of that, but I see these other people as being so flighty and so kind of unreliable, and like I don't even want to be with them for very long because it's so hard for me to be with them. And so I'm just sort of, I don't have a particular question around it other than just I see my resistance to that, but I also see the draw because I want to be more that way. But I kind of want myself to be somewhere in the middle, and I want them to come to the middle also because I have a difficult time having these desires to move in that direction, but knowing here that I wouldn't be able to function in my regular world that way. And I'm just curious about your input on that.
Yeah, thank you. I do see this coming up all the time with this balance of flow and structure, acknowledged in the name of the Academy is Shakti Shiva, and with the polarity work that we use so liberally in this work. And you just named a couple of polarities there. And it's back to the recognizing when there's the pursuit and avoidance, the attachment to identity, of that people can get very identified with. I'm not constrained by that. I don't follow the rules. I'm just in my flow all the time. You know, that's another form of identification. It may have come after some kind of work and feels a liberation to it, but you can start to feel where there's something pulling in a direction that's off of center, that's really tending towards an identity. And we work a lot with, I referenced the masculine feminine balance. We just finished the Soulmate Within course that is all about developing this relationship internally of the where is the stability and where is the movement that can happen to keep the aliveness of the masculine and the feminine principles. And so there really is quite a deep process of developing that listening of where is it most balanced, that comes from recognizing, wow, that's not serving me. That's really pulling me off. Like there's the desire to go eat a bag of cookies. And then if I do it, I end up feeling really crappy for quite a while. And just starting to notice, just like I was talking with Brandon about the reparenting and that concept of being able to come in and notice, oh, what part of me is it that's wanting that? Or what will that do for me? What is needed right now? Is there another way that we can hold that part of self that's in that longing? I know I just went off a little bit. There's so many directions to go in these concepts. Did that start to address your question? Yeah, because it really is. I also know practices, as we're talking about desire and we're talking about like sexual activation energy that can feel so out of control and off kilter that it's scary to people. Like, oh, if I start to crack that open, it's just going to take over my life. Just like if I start to just be in the flow of the moment, there won't be enough structure and I'll be totally out of control and won't get my chores done or whatever it is. And starting to really tune into these deeper places of listening in the body. I find in these practices that bringing it back to the body and the slowing it down, like the first part of your question was about being so influenced by others, which is, there's chameleon personality types and all kinds of ways to frame this, and different modalities that actually address that as being a more porous way of being. So nothing wrong with it, except for there comes a time when there needs to be a boosting of that internal reference point. And you're finding when you step away and actually tune into yourself. So like learning specific practices that help boost the signal in your body. I know for women with cervixes that there's deep practices of tuning into the cervix in a very deep way and starting to feel the depth of impulse that comes from that place, or from the perineum for men. And but I've just noticing that these cues can be learned of how to listen to the vibrations. I've also learned to use a pendulum. It sounds very woo when you hear people using pendulum, but what I've found it actually does is make those vibrations visible and make us more attuned and more aware of what the body already knows. So it's not actually all woo of like, oh, there's some spirit coming and moving my stone now. Really, it's about allowing the body to make visible what's already known inside of it and calibrating to the yes and no that's already held inside of us. So that's just a concrete example of starting to listen to those vibrations more carefully. Okay, I could just talk about this stuff all day, so don't stop me.
I'd love to add something there
Yes,
as well,
thanks,
Kendi. I think you've pointing to a really big piece of work that every single one of us has to do in our journey, and that's uniting the opposites and finding the transcendent position. And of course, you can't immediately transcend. You've got to work in the polarity, in the ping and the pong. And I think coming to that realization, which you pointed to right in the beginning, which is that the thing that you quite like, you also fear, or the thing that we most long for, we also fear. And really seeing how we get stuck in places in our lives, in polarities, and then doing the work of revealing that for ourselves is ongoing. And actually it's something like we used to call Shakti the polarity square queen, because she did polarity squares for absolutely everything, every situation that arose, like the situation that you described. She would do a polarity square for that. So yeah, thank you for bringing that right into our awareness.
Thank
and I
you.
realize, yeah,
We have quite used up our time. Brandon,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I saw your hand up again, but we do need, okay, it was still up. We do need to touch on the course that is upcoming in the next week. That is the 9-month-long sexual shadow integration work class. So all of these themes that we're touching on are held in a much deeper dive container in that 9-month course, including those of the taboo and the life force that will be touched on in Sunday. So I would like to share briefly about my relationship to this work And it's so meaningful for me because I mentioned I was already in alternative relating realms of kink. And I was already in that for a number of years, but I could feel that there was some missing component to the practices. And when I found Shakti, she was actually holding the Tantra and kink worlds, which is fairly uncommon to be acknowledging. When you get down to it, it's really more of the practice of being with what is and playing with the body and sensation and awareness and equanimity. So it makes perfect sense. But she really held these tools that are explored in this course. And she acknowledges the totality of our human patterning and urges, the light and the dark, the stereotypes we function under, especially around sexuality, right? And delving into the pursuits and avoidance concepts and befriending the uncomfortable and expanding capacity to stay present with experience. So even here, 10 years later, after encountering this work, I can remember specific homework assignments I completed, that others completed. And that's something that's so brilliant about being in the course, is being in the journey with others and being able to get the view of the, oh, it's not just me, or, oh, that's completely different from me, or whatever it is that helps see how diverse and deep this process is for each one of us. And I recall this assignment from 10 years ago that was, because it's all about leaning into your edges. And so the course is appropriately challenging for all people who are ready to lean into their edges, and you'll be in charge of leaning into it to whatever extent you're ready for. And at the time, somebody else completed an assignment in a way that was so horrifying for me. I was like, oh my God, please don't ask me to do that. And I wasn't actually asked to do that. It was just the way that they leaned into the assignment. And that won't be expected of me, will it? But now here we are 10 years later, and I'm looking back at that like, oh yeah, remember when that was a thing? Now it's just so easeful to be in my experience of that liberation. And so that is something that has really stayed with me from this work in particular. And now we have just a few minutes left. I'm going to pass it back to Rhianne to get into the nitty-gritty of this course invitation.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Lisa. And I think for me, this work is, I think the greatest gift I've got from it is arriving at a place of taking radical responsibility for my life and for my experience, for my own happiness, and for what I'm creating and for what I'm co-creating. And so, yeah, we'd love to invite you to join us. Just to say a few things, practical things about the course. Registration's now open, and it'll be open until the 7th of April. The early bird price is available for the next 48 hours only, and if you sign up during this time, you receive a $500 discount. And all the links are there for you. We have 4 facilitators on the course. Lisa and I will be joined by Claire Rumor and Stephen Tredrier, who, if you join Sunday's class, you'll get to meet. And it really is a profoundly transformational course, and possibly the most important work that anybody could be doing on the planet right now. So be welcome to join us. If you have any questions, please drop us an email. We'll either record you a video or respond by mail. We invite you.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being with us for this this time and sharing, allowing us to share with you, and also sharing what's moving for you. We deeply appreciate the vulnerability and the intimacy that this work brings to our lives. Anything you'd like to wrap up with, Lisa?
thank you for joining us here and bringing your questions. It's quite brave to share your voices and your thoughts in the chat and live. So appreciate that showing of humanness so much. And with that, thank you. Would love to see you on the
Awesome.
course.
Bye-bye, beautiful people. Appreciating you. Thank you.